That's right, guys. You read the title of the video right. I DNF'd some series, and I'm going to tell you all about it. Welcome back to the channel, Book Dragons. I'm really glad you're here with me. I'm going to be talking today about book series that I have not finished and do not intend to finish. And all of these series have a decent sized fan base. So I understand that you may be watching this video and you are fans of some of these series, and you may have strong feelings about somebody not finishing these series. I get that. So I would love to have that dialogue with you. Please feel free to respond about any of these, but let's keep it respectful, guys, okay? We want a safe comments section for everybody that is watching and replying. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Let's get right to the list. The first one I'm going to talk about is an honorable mention, and that's because I read the original trilogy of books and absolutely loved them. Fantastic books, fantastic writing, fantastic character development. The suspense was out of this world, and that is the Millennium Trilogy by Stieg Larsson. So if you're not familiar with that series, that is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Girl Who Played with Fire, and The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest. All three of those books are fantastic and are absolutely must-reads, I have to say. And it completes the initial character arc for Lisbeth Salander that Stieg Larsson intended. It's on this list because I don't intend to read beyond the first three books. After he wrote the first three books, Stieg Larsson died, unfortunately. I've heard so many people say that the other Millennium books just don't quite live up to the standard that the first three books set, oftentimes feeling completely different than the first three books. And I just don't feel like that's what I want. Honestly, I really want to love the series as it was when I finished the trilogy and leave it at that. Now, you might comment below and tell me all these great things about the other books, and you might actually convince me to try one of the books that are outside the trilogy. But as of right now, I'm feeling like it's a DNF. I love the trilogy. I would read it again. As far as the other books, I really have no interest. The other series that's on here as an honorable mention is one I'm kind of on the fence with. I'm kind of waiting to see what happens with me when I go back to the series. And that's the Malazan Book of the Fallen. I absolutely loved Gardens of the Moon. I absolutely despised Dead House Gates. I almost DNF'd Dead House Gates, but I made it. I pushed through and I did it. But it was a chore, guys. I did not like that book. And so then I started pretty much right away into Memories of Ice. And I was enjoying Memories of Ice. I was having a good time with it. But I think I was so burned out from Dead House Gates that I just couldn't do it. And so I temporarily DNF'd Memories of Ice. So I am going to go back to that one, but I am giving myself room to DNF it permanently if I'm just not clicking with it. And I know that's going to get me a lot of comments. There's a huge Malazan fan base, and I respect that. There are so many great things in those books. I get why you like it. Just some things haven't worked for me so far, and so we'll see what happens with that one. So now on to the series that I have officially, matter-of-factly, permanently DNF'd. And the first one on this list is Rift War by Raymond E. Feist. I read the first book, Magician's Apprentice. It was fine. Wasn't great for me. It was just kind of ho-hum. The ending didn't really click with me that well. I might be willing to look into some of the books that he co-authored with Janny Wirtz, but I haven't started reading Janny Wirtz yet to know if I jive with her writing style. So that's kind of a wait and see. But yeah, the initial Rift War saga, I have no desire to ever pick that up again. It just didn't wow me enough to keep going. The next book series on this list is The Burning by Evan Winter. I read Rage of Dragons when the hype train was going fast, and I was expecting to really love it. I'd heard so many good things about it. Everybody was raving about it at the time. Myself and a group of other people started reading it together, and most of us came to the consensus that the hype was completely unfounded. Like, we're reading this book and we're like, what the hell is this? Just, it's got a large fan base, and I don't want to completely disrespect it. Evan Winter, I'm sure, is a fantastic author. He's probably improved from book one, maybe, and he was obviously good enough to get picked up from Orbit, so I don't want to talk bad about the series, but it just didn't work for me. I got to the end of that book and I felt like I had just wasted hours of time reading a book that I really didn't enjoy, and wishing I had spent time reading a different book. So I'm not going to be going back and reading the rest of the novels in the Burning series. I know from what I heard he's got it planned to be a quartet at least, and I have no desire. So if you're a fan of Rage of Dragons and his second book in the series, which I don't even remember what it was called, I didn't look it up. I didn't care. um, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if this is your favorite series of all time, and here I am dissing on it, but it just didn't work for me. And mad respect to Evan. He's gained a huge following, and he got picked up by Orbit, which is a big deal, so I wish him all the best. His books just aren't for me. The next series on this list is the Ender Saga by Orson Scott Card. I read Ender's Game several years back. In fact, I think I've read it twice, and I did really enjoy it. It's a great sci-fi novel, and I felt like I was really good with just the one book. So, yeah, I'm not going to go back and read the Ender Saga. I really have no desire, but I know it's really popular, so if you're a fan of the Ender Saga and you've loved the other books in the series, that's awesome. I'm so happy for you. It's just not something that I want to spend my time getting into. The next book series on this list is the Outlander Saga by Diana Gabaldon. This series has a huge fan base, and I read the first book. It was a real slog for me, guys. In fact, I remember when I first posted on social media that I was reading Outlander, because back then I wasn't on YouTube. I posted about it on Facebook, I think, and somebody commented and was like, I'm really surprised you're reading that book. That does not seem like a book for you. And probably because it's more of a historical romance than anything. There is a time travel element to it that I thought was kind of cool. And that's what initially made me pick up the first book. But after getting to the end of book one, I'm like, no. I'm okay having read the first book, but I have no desire to continue with the series. And there's how many books in the series at this point? Like 10 or 12 or something like that. So yeah, I'm sure she's got a huge fan base. She is a great writer. I enjoyed her writing style. That much I'll give her. But the story doesn't really give me that much buy-in. It was pretty heavy on the romance element, which is fine. But that's just not really what I'm looking for in a book. So, Outlander series, if you love it, I'm happy for you, but I'm moving on. The next series on this list is The Dragons of Requiem by Daniel Aronson. I'm not sure exactly how I got into reading these books, except for the fact that the covers are pretty cool. Every book has a dragon's head on the front cover. I think at the time it reminded me a lot of Christopher Paolini's books, the Inheritance Cycle, because they each had dragons on the cover, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool, and I like dragons. So I decided to pick up these books. You know, they were pretty cheap, and he's written a lot of books. And as I was reading book one, I was like, this writing isn't very good. The plot seemed really surface level and basic, and it seemed like it was written just for fluff. And, that was just the first book. I get it. Maybe he's really improved as a writer. I remember trying one of the books in one of his other series as well, and this was after, he'd been publishing books for a long time, and it was still kind of the same thing. It wasn't one of the Requiem books, it was a different one. And I thought, I'm just thinking this guy isn't for me. I think he has a huge fan base because he is a full-time writer. He makes a full-time living at writing, and so that's awesome. More power to him. He's obviously gotten a huge fan base. He puts out a newsletter and everything, so people are constantly finding out about new books he's written. And he's really prolific. He's got a huge amount of books that he's written, so the guy's working hard. It just didn't click for me, and I don't know if any of his books ever would click for me. So yeah, I DNF'd the Dragons of Requiem series. I really don't plan to go back and read anything else he's written. And then the next book series on this list is The Book of the New Sun by Gene Wolfe. I'm going to give you a minute to take a breath after what I just said, because I know you may be a fan of The Book of the New Sun, and I have huge respect for the fan base of this book series. It just wasn't for me. I did read the first two books, which is bound up in an omnibus, Shadow and Claw. I did read it, so I'm halfway through the series technically, but I did not like it at all. It started off pretty interesting, and then the further I got into the story, it just got worse and worse for me. So, not a series that I am really into. Severian is not a character that I really cared for at all by the end of that book. And I'm just happily DNFing that book. I'm going to move on and let other people enjoy it, because obviously there is a huge fan base for that series. Some people that I have mad respect for love that series. Just because I respect them doesn't mean I'm going to love the series, though. So, just putting that out there, Book of the New Sun is definitely on this DNF list. And the last one on this list. Are you ready for it? Are you sitting down? Do you have a pillow you can punch? The final series on this list is The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. I made a video a long time back about how I was quitting The Wheel of Time. At the time, there was still a slight chance that I might pick it back up in the far future. When Chaz is like 70 or 80. In my mind, it was temporarily shelved for the time being until I got a desire to go back to it. But the further away that I get from that video, and the more series that fall on my radar that I really want to read, and the closer I get to my expiration date, which, of course, I don't know. I could live like 60, 70 more years, and that would be great. But the reality is, will I be able to read all the books that I want to read in my lifetime? And I just don't know. So, I am making the official decision to permanently DNF The Wheel of Time. I'm not going to go back to it. I'm never going to pick up the books again. You heard it here first. It's not that it's a bad series. I enjoyed book 1 a lot. Book 2 was okay, but it was still kind of a slog for me. And I've since started watching the show, of course, and even though the show didn't start off great, it's really started to build up, and I'm starting to enjoy it more, and I'm thinking, I think I'm okay just sticking with the show, to be honest. And that also depends on if it keeps getting renewed for multiple seasons. I don't know that it will. That kind of tends to happen with streaming services. But if it doesn't get renewed and all I have is the books, I'm still not going to go back and read the books. I just don't feel like I have the bandwidth for a 15-book series of that magnitude that didn't really feel as epic for me as it was for other people. That's my decision. I'm sticking with it. You can try and convince me otherwise. I'm sure I'll get lots of people talking to me in the comments saying, Chaz, no, you need to go back to the Wheel of Time. I appreciate you. I love you. I do. I'm not going to, though, guys. I've just got so many other books I want to read. Who knows what tomorrow's going to bring, right? So life is too short to read books that you don't want to read, right? So that's my list. And I know some of these are pretty controversial picks, but let me know in the comments below what you think about the series that I chose. Let me know some of the series that you have DNF'd in the comments below as well. I would love to hear what those are, and you may very well have DNF'd some series that I really love, and I respect that. Not every series is for every reader. So until next time, guys, make sure you are reading more books, especially books that you love and really desire to read, and I'll talk with you next time.